The engine of the old station wagon hums loudly against the asphalt, cutting through the crisp morning air as it crosses the state line. Inside the vehicle, 17-year-old Daniel LaRusso stares blankly out the window, watching the familiar scenery of Newark, New Jersey, slowly fade into distant memories. Beside him, his mother, Lucille, beams with an infectious, unstoppable optimism about their grand journey toward the Golden Coast. She talks endlessly about the pristine swimming pools, the swaying palm trees, and the glittering promises of Southern California. For her, this cross-country relocation represents a vital, fresh beginning, a stepping stone toward a much brighter, more lucrative professional future. For Daniel, however, the sudden transition feels like an absolute exile from everything he has ever known or loved. He deeply resents leaving his loyal friends, his familiar neighborhood streets, and the comfortable rhythm of his old East Coast life. When the car finally rattles into the sun-baked, dusty parking lot of the South Seas apartment complex in Reseda, reality hits hard. The building is visibly weathered, the promised luxury pool is completely devoid of water, and the overall atmosphere feels incredibly foreign. As they unpack their heavy cardboard boxes under the scorching, unforgiving sun, Daniel feels an overwhelming wave of isolation wash over him. He tries to put on a brave face for his incredibly enthusiastic mother, but the heavy pit of anxiety in his stomach tells a completely different story about his new life. The bright morning sun glints intensely off the rolling Pacific waves as Daniel joins a lively group of local teenagers. They invite him down to a vibrant, end-of-summer beach party, which serves as his very first introduction to California youth culture. Amidst the loud music, the crackling beach bonfires, and the casual soccer games on the sand, Daniel struggles initially to find his footing. However, his natural athletic charm quickly shines through when he skillfully displays some impressive soccer footwork, catching the eye of a captivating young cheerleader named Ollie Mills. Ollie, who hails from the incredibly wealthy hills of Encino, is immediately drawn to Daniel's down-to-earth, authentic East Coast demeanor, and the two share a genuine, instantaneous spark. They laugh, talk, and playfully kick the ball back and forth, completely oblivious to the dark clouds gathering on the horizon. Suddenly, the roaring thunder of approaching motorcycles shatters the peaceful, carefree atmosphere of the beach gathering. A group of tough, muscular local boys, clad in matching leather jackets, aggressively tear across the sand, kicking up thick clouds of dust. Their arrogant leader, Johnny Lawrence, is Ollie's wealthy, deeply possessive ex-boyfriend, and he is clearly furious to see her interacting so closely with an unfamiliar outsider. Johnny dismounts his bike menacingly, marching directly toward Ollie to demand her absolute attention, instantly shifting the energy of the entire afternoon from joy to absolute terror. The tension on the dark beach instantly escalates to a dangerous boiling point as Johnny aggressively snatches Ollie's portable radio. Ollie protests fiercely, demanding that he respect her boundaries, but Johnny remains entirely stubborn, completely refusing to back down from the heated confrontation. Sensing her deep distress, Daniel chooses to step forward, bravely placing himself directly between the intimidating local bully and the shaken young woman. He firmly demands that Johnny return the property and leave her alone, an unexpected move that heavily amuses Johnny's mocking, tight-knit group of friends. Johnny, who happens to be the top black belt student at the aggressive Cobra Kai karate dojo, smiles with cold, calculated malice. He casually tosses the radio into the sand and mockingly challenges the newcomer to back up his tough words with actual actions. Daniel tries to defend himself using basic, rudimentary karate moves he learned back at the New Jersey Community Center, but he is completely outmatched. Johnny effortlessly blocks Daniel's clumsy, telegraph strikes with terrifying, lightning-fast precision, displaying a ruthless level of martial arts expertise. With a series of brutal, highly coordinated kicks and punches, Johnny violently sweeps Daniel into the wet sand, leaving him bruised, humiliated, and gasping for air. As the bikers roar away into the dark night, Ollie rushes to offer assistance, but a deeply embarrassed Daniel pushes her away, utterly crushed by the overwhelming sting of his very first California defeat. The heavy morning air feels oppressive as Daniel trudges slowly back toward his apartment, his visible facial injuries covered clumsily by sunglasses. He desperately tries to hide the painful physical evidence of the beach brawl from his incredibly observant, fiercely protective mother. However, his mounting frustration boils over during a tense, emotional argument in their cramped kitchen, where he loudly vents his intense hatred for California. Seeking a quiet escape from the suffocating drama, Daniel retreats to the dark, cluttered maintenance room of the apartment complex. There, he hopes to fix his badly mangled bicycle, which was severely damaged during another casual, cruel encounter with Johnny's aggressive motorcycle gang. Inside the dimly lit workshop, Daniel encounters the building's quiet, eccentric Okinawan maintenance man, a humble older gentleman named Mr. Miyagi. Miyagi is quietly working on a beautiful, delicate bonsai tree, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with Daniel's frantic, chaotic inner energy. The older man observes the teenager's deep frustration and swollen eye with a silent, deeply knowing look that requires absolutely no words. Without asking a single intrusive question, Miyagi gently takes the broken bicycle parts and promises to fix the machine himself. Daniel is deeply struck by this unexpected act of pure, unconditional kindness from an absolute stranger, marking the very first time he feels truly safe since moving across the country. Desperate to learn how to effectively defend himself against his relentless tormentors, Daniel decides to investigate local martial arts schools. His frantic search eventually leads him directly to the sleek, imposing front doors of the notorious Cobra Kai Karate Dojo. Peering cautiously through the large glass windows, Daniel witnesses a scene of intense, terrifyingly militaristic discipline that sends chills down his spine. Dozens of students, including Johnny Lawrence, stand in perfect, rigid formation, executing powerful, aggressive strikes in complete unison. At the front of the room stands their ruthless, fiercely intense sensei, an ex-Special Forces Vietnam veteran named John Kreese. Kreese paces menacingly between the rows of students, barking out an aggressive, uncompromising philosophy that completely dominates the room. He loudly demands that his students show absolutely no mercy to their opponents, explicitly teaching them that weakness must be utterly destroyed. For Kreese, karate is not a peaceful means of self-defense, but a brutal weapon used to completely conquer and humiliate the enemy. Daniel watches in absolute horror as Johnny flawlessly executes a devastating, highly aggressive combination, realizing that his tormentor skills are deeply backed by a dark, dangerous ideology. Realizing he is completely out of his depth in this den of wolves, Daniel quietly steps back into the shadows, feeling more vulnerable and utterly defenseless than ever before. The festive, chaotic energy of the high school Halloween dance offers Daniel a brief, welcome respite from his constant anxiety. To navigate the crowded gymnasium safely without attracting unwanted attention, he wears an ingenious, highly creative costume featuring a fully enclosed shower curtain. This clever disguise allows him to move around freely, share a sweet, lingering dance with Ollie, and briefly enjoy being a normal teenager. However, the fragile peace is completely shattered when Daniel spots Johnny and his ruthless gang resting casually inside the school bathroom. Johnny is sitting quietly in a closed stall, completely vulnerable and entirely focused on rolling a cigarette, completely unaware of his surroundings. Overcome by a sudden, impulsive desire for sweet payback, Daniel quietly sneaks to the top of the bathroom stalls with a water hose. With a mischievous grin, he turns the valve on full blast, completely drenching an incredibly shocked Johnny with freezing cold water. Daniel immediately drops the hose and bolts for the exit, running as fast as his legs can carry him into the dark, foggy night. The furious Cobra Kai students instantly give chase, their heavy footsteps echoing ominously across the empty school grounds. Daniel sprints desperately through the shadows, his heavy, cumbersome costume slowing him down significantly as the relentless predators quickly close the gap behind him. The cold night air fills Daniel's lungs as he sprints desperately toward the familiar perimeter of the South Seas apartment complex. Panting heavily, he reaches the tall wooden chain-link fence, frantically scrambling to climb over to the absolute safety of his home. However, just as he reaches the very top, Johnny's powerful hands ruthlessly drag him back down onto the hard, unforgiving asphalt. The 5 Cobra Kai students immediately surround the trapped teenager, their faces twisted into expressions of pure, unadulterated cruelty. They completely ignore Daniel's desperate pleas for restraint, fueled entirely by Johnny's furious demand for absolute, immediate retribution for the embarrassing bathroom prank. A brutal, completely one-sided beating commences in the dark shadows, with the highly trained martial artists landing heavy, devastating blows. They show absolutely no mercy, systematically striking Daniel until he is completely helpless, crumpled on the ground in intense pain. Johnny, completely blinded by rage, prepares to deliver a final, potentially catastrophic kick to Daniel's defenseless head despite his friend's quiet warnings. Suddenly, a silent silhouette drops seamlessly from the sky, stepping directly into the path of the oncoming, dangerous strike. It is Mr. Miyagi, the unassuming handyman, who has unexpectedly intervened to protect the boy. With unbelievable speed, fluidity, and absolute precision, the older man effortlessly deflects the brutal attacks, completely neutralizing the dangerous threat. The quiet atmosphere of Mr. Miyagi's private workshop feels incredibly peaceful compared to the violent chaos that occurred moments earlier. Daniel slowly regains full consciousness, groaning softly as he finds himself resting comfortably on a woven mat, while Miyagi quietly applies healing ointments. The older man gently dabs a soothing, pungent herbal mixture onto Daniel's severely bruised face, instantly easing the sharp, throbbing pain. Daniel looks at the modest handyman with an expression of pure, unadulterated awe, his mind struggling to process what happened. He vividly remembers watching the elderly man effortlessly dismantle 5 elite, black belt martial artists in a matter of mere seconds. Daniel eagerly peppers Miyagi with endless, frantic questions, desperately begging the older man to immediately teach him the secrets of Okinawan karate. Miyagi, however, calmly shakes his head, firmly explaining that karate should only be used as an honorable tool for defense, never for aggression. He explains that the true problem does not lie within the young boys themselves, but within the cruel, toxic teachings of their ruthless sensei. To resolve the dangerous conflict permanently, Miyagi surprisingly proposes that they visit the Cobra Kai dojo together to speak directly with their leadership. Daniel is completely terrified by the risky idea of returning to his enemy's territory, but Miyagi's calm, completely unbothered confidence gives him the courage to agree. The heavy, intense scent of sweat and leather fills the air as Mr. Miyagi and Daniel walk into the Cobra Kai dojo. Their unexpected arrival instantly halts the intense training session, drawing the cold, calculating gaze of John Kreese and his elite students. Miyagi steps forward calmly, politely asking the fierce sensei to instruct his students to completely cease their relentless harassment of young Daniel. Kreese, however, completely dismisses the peaceful request, mockingly stating that his dojo does not tolerate cowards who hide behind older men. He aggressively demands that Daniel fight Johnny right then and there on the training mat to settle their scores permanently. Miyagi firmly declines the unfair match, noting that a 5-on-1 conflict is completely dishonorable and entirely unfair to the untrained boy. Instead, Miyagi looks at the tournament poster on the wall and proposes a formal, regulated compromise to settle the dispute. He suggests that Daniel will enter the prestigious, upcoming All-Valley Under 18 karate tournament to compete against Kreese's students on completely equal terms. Until that day arrives, the Cobra Kai students must agree to completely leave Daniel alone to train in absolute peace. priest considers the bold proposal, smiling coldly as he accepts the high-stakes terms. But he issues a terrifying warning. If Daniel fails to appear at the tournament, the brutal harassment will resume tenfold for both of them. The morning sun rises brightly over Mr. Miyagi's pristine, beautifully hidden backyard estate, illuminating a stunning collection of classic American cars. Daniel arrives early, his heart pounding with intense excitement as he eagerly prepares to finally begin his official high-level karate training. However, before a single move is shown, Miyagi stands rigidly before the boy, demanding that they establish a solemn, unbreakable pact. He states that Daniel must promise to follow every single instruction completely, without asking a single question, throwing a tantrum, or showing doubt. Daniel eagerly nods his head in absolute agreement, completely desperate to learn the powerful martial arts techniques that will finally protect him. Miyagi then hands Daniel a soft cloth and a bucket of paste, pointing directly toward the long row of vintage automobiles. He instructs the teenager to meticulously wax every single car using a highly specific, repetitive hand motion. Miyagi demonstrates the precise technique, emphasizing a wide, clockwise motion with the right hand, followed by a counterclockwise motion with the left. He firmly repeats the iconic phrase that will forever define their journey together: wax on, wax off. Daniel is deeply confused by this menial task, wondering how polishing luxury vehicles could possibly help him defeat elite karate fighters. However, remembering his strict promise, he quietly drops to his knees and begins the long, exhausting work under the hot sun. Days quickly blend into an exhausting, repetitive cycle of grueling physical labor that pushes Daniel's patience to its absolute breaking limit. After spending hours polishing the cars, Daniel expects to finally transition to actual martial arts training, but Miyagi has other plans. The master hands him a heavy paintbrush and points toward the massive wooden fence that completely surrounds the beautiful property. He strictly orders Daniel to paint the entire structure using precise, highly specific vertical motions, demanding flawless form with every stroke. Soon after, Daniel is instructed to meticulously sand the weathered wooden floors of the backyard using rhythmic, side-to-side leg movements. The teenager's hands become covered in painful blisters, his muscles ache intensely, and his lower back throops with constant pain. Meanwhile, Miyagi seems completely indifferent to the boy's physical suffering, spending his days calmly fishing, tending to bonsai trees, or relaxing. Daniel feels deeply exploited, growing increasingly convinced that the old man is simply using him for free domestic labor. He spends his lonely evenings complaining bitterly to his mother, his initial enthusiasm completely replaced by deep resentment and crushing disappointment. He feels completely foolish for trusting the eccentric handyman, believing that his precious time is being completely wasted while his dangerous Cobra Kai enemies continue to grow stronger. The psychological tension finally reaches an explosive breaking point on a warm evening as Daniel fiercely throws down his painting tools. Overcome by intense anger, he loudly confronts Mr. Miyagi, fiercely accusing the older man of breaking their sacred pact and using him. He yells that he has spent days performing exhausting, menial chores without learning a single practical karate block or defensive punch. Miyagi quietly finishes his dinner, sets down his bowl, and stands up slowly to face the incredibly furious teenager. With a calm, commanding voice, Miyagi suddenly tells Daniel to stand perfectly straight and execute the wax on hand motion. Daniel complies half-heartedly, but his eyes widen in absolute shock as Miyagi suddenly launches a lightning-fast, powerful punch directly at his chest. Instantly, Daniel's muscle memory kicks in, and his arm moves automatically, flawlessly deflecting the master's strike using the exact car polishing motion. Miyagi then unleashes a barrage of rapid attacks, commanding Daniel to paint the fence and sand the floor. With absolute amazement, Daniel realizes that the repetitive, grueling chores have perfectly wired foundational defensive blocks directly into his deep muscle memory. His hands move with perfect, effortless precision, successfully blocking every single one of the master's expert strikes without a single thought. The deep realization washes over Daniel. He was being trained intensely all along, marking the true beginning of his transformation.